guess I'm going live right now. Welcome to the first episode of whatever I called it, live stream learning, Python Flask. And the purpose of this stream is just to get into one random technology and see what I can do with it in about an hour. So the tech that I picked up today is Flask, which is, if we can see here, a web development framework. So let's see, we're just gonna go open up here. Yeah, this is mainly to test my technical setup here and see what can be done in 1 hour. So at the end of this, I'm gonna try and at least get a little bit of like a web page going connected to MySQL if I have time for that. If not, it might just be setting up Flask and running it and going through what this is all about. So it's a web framework, and we'll just go through the docs here to see what it's all about here. Just read here. It's a micro web framework. Micro does not mean that your whole application has to fit in a single Python file, which is a good thing because that would suck for organization. The micro framework means it keeps the core as simple as possible. So, and what is a framework in this context? A framework for software is just like a way to direct you towards an end goal of building an application. So it kind of puts constraints on you, which is a good thing, because sometimes if you just have the whole canvas open to you to do whatever you want, you might end up making it kind of a mess. So with those constraints, you have the ability to work within where was I going? With those constraints, you have the ability to work towards a goal without having to get distracted by all the things you can do. So hopefully that was a decent explanation for framework, but we're just going to go right into it and start with the installation. So blah 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 Python, the first thing you need to do is make a project directory. So I'm gonna do this in WSL. WSL is Windows Subsystems for Linux, and it's a little cool thing that Microsoft has developed that gives us the ability to run a Linux kernel within Windows. So I made my project and I did that. I'm going to go into that now. So I created this ahead of time. All right, so empty directory. We're going to start up a Python 3 virtual environment. That's what this thing is doing, Python 3 with the directory of env. Virtual environment is, in Python's term, is a way of segregating all the different versions of Python from each other so that you can have, like, for example, here Python 3 or Python 2 separated in a separate folder. Holy shat. All right, we got someone on the live stream. This is gonna make it a little awkward. So what we're going to do is follow those directions there. We're going to create, I don't have this installed, so I am going to, man, this is dangerous. Someone's going to see my password online one day. Learning so hard. Glad you're learning so hard, Mr. Kim. Yeah, I'm gonna delete this live stream right after, man, because once I figure out what I'm doing here, I'm gonna redo it properly. All right, so we got our virtual environment going on there. And the next step that it wants us to do is activate the environment. So this is just a way of, after you install it, to actually tell it to enter into that virtual environment. So this is telling bash or whatever shell script to virtual activate. Oh, look at that. Where is it? What happened to it? Before you work on your project, activate the damn environment. I'm trying to see where it is here. It's such a lie. Oh wait, did I install Python? I don't think I installed it, did I? Python 3. Virtual environment. Let's put this over here. All right. I might have done that already. I totally forgot. Okay. Let's try not to fail too freaking hard at this in front of the whole world. There you go. Activate it. So after we've installed our Python virtual environment, we've activated it, we're now going to do this pip nonsense, which is the Python package manager. Pip install Flask. Oh, I'm not actually in the, I'm not even in the right directory. So this is the spirit of live stream learning, is that we're going to make all sorts of mistakes and it's going to be a big freaking mess. Let me just delete all this. Deleting that. The cool thing about all this stuff is that you end up making it once. You do all this stuff once and you like never forget about it, because of how often do you normally start a new project. Okay, we're going to do this from the right directory over here. I got some use conda. Have you used conda like that? What's app builder? I'm just reading the live chat here. From two handsome strangers that I've never met in my entire life, but I'm pretty sure they're very, very good looking. I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to say that about my viewers, but whatever. All right, we've got up to this stage here, activate the environment. Now I'm going to install this Flask stuff. We're going to get down to the meat and bones of it. Pip install Flask, here it goes. Let me see, can I get bigger? Yeah, I get bigger. Okay, so Flask is installed. Blah blah virtual, and we've already done that. Now we are going to get into writing the application. So quick start, let's open that inside this other tab. Over here, look at that. We're gonna open up, so I'm gonna open up a editor called PyCharm. It's a very charming Python editor. Oh my gosh. I wonder if anyone can hear all that noise from my family playing video games. Okay. Boom. brand new editor here. So PyCharm has a community edition if you you want to be as cool as me and use it. But otherwise, any old text file will do. So let's do something. Let's open up our browser again and create this Hello World application. Let's make it into a source directory. And I'm going to call it app. Can I cut and paste into here? Wow, look at that, I could. Okay, so there's a couple of things happening in this Python application. Here, I'm going to get out of here because I don't think I have my Python or my VI set up properly for indents. Look at that, this indent is all wrong. It doesn't like it. Look, the cool thing about PyCharm is it can tell me all the stupid mistakes I made. So if I can bring that up, little light bulb, reformat file, and bam, everything is looking a lot prettier. Yes, Mr. Kim, you are very good looking. I can only assume you are very good looking. Mr. Rollick, I'm not gonna comment. So let's look at this. We implemented the Flask class, and this is the thing that will actually run the application here. Bam. Where is my command line here? So I'm going to set up, I called it app.py. And then, let's see, Flask run. Will this work? I changed directory. Running on 127.0.0.1 5000. Let's see what happens if I go into there. HTTP 127. So this is the loopback device 5000. Hello world. Okay. So we can see that this worked, and let's take a look at what it's actually doing. The cool thing about Flask is that it puts a bunch of simple annotations around your application so that you don't really have to worry about building out all the logic that this would have to do, such as this crap in here, or this junk, or whatever the PG term is. And we get a simple application going that way. Now, let's say if we wanted to build something a little bit more complex, we're just going to build another endpoint to it. The thing about this is you can probably let me put here route, and then you can create any endpoint you want to it. So you, let's say API blah. Blah is a really common API term in the industry. Just let me make it return okay. But obviously I need to blah function, have a function name in there. And again, PyCharm allows me to pretty things up that way. And let's see, I don't know if this will take my changes immediately or not. Let's just refresh. API blah. Nope. So let's do this again. I Control-C to quit the application, and yeah. So what's happening here is that Python is creating this thing called PyCache, so it kind of caches this script here, so it's not having to interpret it all the time. So that's one thing you have to remember. Unlike other things like PHP, other scripting language, where you can just hit refresh and see your changes. Python, in the current state that I have it in, will require you to quit out of it or delete PyCache or whatever. So Flask run to bring it up, and then obviously we see it doing that. So I'm gonna create a different API here, or maybe just create an application that stores, I'm just trying to figure out some idea here. Let me say if I'm a real estate application here, because real estate is booming these days and we want to get in on that action. Well, you know what? Without the underscore or with the underscore? That's a good question. I'm going to create it without the underscore. So I'm going to create a simple application here where, as a real estate agent, you can come in and you can see all the house listings, and then you can add house listings. So let's sketch that out first. So the first thing we want to do is houses.py. Actually, you know what? Maybe we should call this, if I was to do it, the real estate is the whole application where the endpoint has something to do with like domain logic. So in this case, I guess houses. So house, like the TV show. And notice over here that there's routes in here. These routes, as we mentioned, dictate where the URL points to in respect to these functions. So / goes into hello world, / API / blah goes into blah function. Simple enough. So I'm going to create a routes file for this guy here called routes.py. Right? Very creative. And in the routes.py, I'm going to sketch out all the different endpoints that I want from it. So we're going to go from, let me see here. I have my notes. What I want to do is import Flask, because that's something I need to do in order to get all the Flask functionality, and that route stuff is the Flask functionality. And define get houses. Now we're going to do what we saw in the other file here. So app.py API house. So house. And one thing you can do with Flask is you can specify the different web methods that you can access with it. So be it post, get, put, whatever, all those guys. I'm gonna say that this is accessible by get. So anything with a get method will be there. Oh, look at this. And I'm gonna return just house. So if I go to API house and do a get on it, which is just a regular web browse request, I should get house back from it. So let's try that. Not found. You know why? The reason why is that the application goes into app.py, and notice over here there's no connection to the this here routes.py. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna right there, I'm going to put house. Oh, the thing with Python is that you need one of these things if you want to consider it a module and be able to import it with the import command. Otherwise, it doesn't know what you want from it. So I think this is source.house.routes. And oh no. Yeah, because it's like, oh, you're not using anything from it. You want to get rid of it? So I'm going to reformat the file there. Probably should put it at the top, but let's not worry ourselves with cleanliness at this point in the game. Let's just get an application running. That's what we're doing. We're learning. Okay. No module name source. Why not? Okay, so what's happening here is that, let's see here. What if I get rid of this? Oh no, red line. No module name source. So routes line 3, source, oh wait. From, this is what happens when when you put things in weird directories that it doesn't expect. Line 5. Where is it going wrong here? So, source, from source dot, how did I get this to work in the first place here? While importing app, no source. Who's still around in the chat here if anyone can tell me what I'm doing wrong? Because we're all learning together here, even though I've done this a million times. Source, so this guy's working very well, right? Importing app, while here on line 5 of source.apply, import source houses route, no module source, and this is the module. You know what? No, you, yeah, you, okay. There definitely needs to be a, okay, there we go. Now we have all sorts of other errors. We've gone beyond that other thing here. So module source app has no attribute route. What line is this? Line 6. Module source app has no attribute route. Where? Why not? App equals whatever. Ba, ba, ba. I'm just trying to figure out what is going on here. So we have this guy is saying that it doesn't exist in the app. And this guy is pointing to source dot app. I think that will do it. There we go. That was a little bit of a journey, but we're there. So what did we learn from that little misadventure? Number 1 was that, so I put the subdirectory here, which is a module in the Python world of the routes over here, and then I needed to put the init.py so that the top layer here, this is probably not even visible to half of the people here, the top layer here at the app.py was able to reference that, so it can go source, houses, routes, because without that it doesn't see that as a module. And same thing from this side over here is that it had to be source.app instead of just the whole source. I had to direct it right into this guy so that it knew where to find all this guy here, the apps, the Flask stuff here. Now we've got that over there, and we want to create another endpoint where if you do another web call called post, it will create a house. And then we're just, right now, it's just stubbing it out, which is not actually any real logic, but just a general outline of what we want the application to do. So one is we get, and the other is we post, or you could do a put, but whatever. Enjoy your dinner, Mr. Kim. Enjoy your dinner. This is a test run, as we can see here, just to get my stuff straight so that I don't even know if this is going to sound good or look good. Like, look at this. I'm like disappearing from there. Anyway, we are creating two endpoints, which is creating a house and returning a house. What if we did a house list equals, and then from here we put like rich house. So I'm creating something called a dictionary inside Python, which is fancy array, or technically a hash. It's like a key value pair, but right now I'm just going to create like an unordered list of houses. And I'm going to return that. However, this is not going to work. We know why it's not going to work is because the routes expects to return a string in Python, but this is a tuple or whatever, and we need to do something to create to make it turn this into a string, basically. So there's something called JSONify, and JSONify is a way to return like a JSON, which is JavaScript object notation, a JSON version of the list. Now Flask has something called from Flask import, it's called JSONify. So that's this function I was kind of skipping ahead to. Man, live streaming is a different skill altogether from talking on a camera, because number one, you gotta have your thoughts straight, or you just gonna end up stammering and stuttering like I am, or not provide a good user experience as I'm jumping all over the place. So there we go. I created this function that has rich house, poor house. It's a dictionary. This JSONify returns it as a string, so I can see at my API endpoint here that it returns that. Right now it's hard coded, meaning that it's just whatever I put in here is going to be returned by this endpoint. And we're gonna try and change that. Hopefully, about 30 minutes in, hopefully I get to that some point in time. So what this is doing is just, right now it's our endpoint. I need a way to store all this stuff. And in order to store it, I'm going to have to use something like a database to persist the data. And the database that I'm going to use is MySQL, and hook that onto there. So we're going to use something called, go search that up, Flask SQL, called SQL Alchemy. This is a Flask module that will allow me to hook up into a SQL database. So in our case, I'm going to be using MySQL, like I said. All right, so the installation for this is that, let me see here, if I get onto the command line again, let's just kill that, go back to the root and pip install Flask _SQL Alchemy. Hopefully this guy exists. There's actually additional ways to manage all this. Right now I'm doing it completely through the command line. There's better ways to manage it, and I think we can go into that in later episodes, but for now we're just going to keep things painful and simple. So we got SQL Alchemy installed using the Python package manager pip, and we're just going to go ahead and actually use it. Let's just keep this open and take a look at the minimal application that they have there. So actually, where I said we're going to use MySQL, the sample that they have here is using something called SQLite, and that's actually probably a good starting point. We'll hook up into something like SQL later, like MySQL later. I'm just going to do this because it's in the example, and that's what we're doing. We're learning from the web example. So in this sort of example, it's creating a class called the user class, and there's some fields associated with it. And then this here is the serialization method. We're going to do something similar, but instead of user, we're going to create a house class, because that's what we're all about. We're all about houses, right? House.py, singular, right here. So I'm just going to, oh, look at this. Copy and paste this stuff here. This is a completely unorganized code base right now, in that if I'm to copy and paste this, I'm going to put the configuration right inside the model here, which isn't a good thing. What is a better thing is to have that separated into another file. But simplicity, we're going to go over like best practices later on. Simplicity is the key here. So we got those import statements, and we need the app, and we need to put the config inside the app, and then we need to create the DB. So what we do know is that we can get the app from source app import app. So we got the app. Now we're going to configure. And just paste that here. Flask app builder, good boilerplate to get something up and running. Yes, it is, but let's try and understand all this stuff here. Let's fumble through it, because this is how I learn. I learn by just fumbling through it and then making all sorts of mistakes, even though I've done this so many times already. It's like every time you start from scratch. So I'm just copying and pasting from this guy here. You know what? Why don't I just copy and paste and change? That's probably a better way, right? All right. What's this guy? He probably wants it to format nicer. Yes. So we do want an ID field over there, and you just call it a house name. That's all I really need, right? 2 fields in our application, just the name of the house and some sort of unique ID over there. Now we'll just change this serialization of it such that when we call it, let's give it a better name, house name. So the keen-eyed in you will know that this is an ORM, object relational whatever model, and it is a way to represent rows in the database as an object. So what I'm here, what I have here is the actual object, and then it represents the different columns inside the object as different properties of it. Now I have that in there, and what I want to do is follow this lead here, where I will create what do you call it? I create the actual instance of the class over here, feeding it in with the parameters, and then use the DB database operations to add that into the database and finally commit that in. So we're going to see what happens if we follow that. Going to get rid of our fake stuff there. Maybe just, actually, you know what? That still needs to happen. It's this guy where we want to put the actual stuff in there, the actual logic. Let's see, we want to create an endpoint where we pass in some variable, and then we will use that as part of the house name. What Flask has is something called the request object in it. So if I go, let me see, Flask dot request dot values dot, I'm gonna call this house name. So if I pass in a form value of house name, I will house name. I will put into this variable. I'm just going to return it right back at you. We are going to Flask run this, and I'm going to use, oops, what's going on here? Cannot import app. Where are we at? Oh. Has to run from that directory. I'm going to use something called Postman to allow me to access that through a post, because doing it from just the URL is a default get, and that's not going to work. So Postman, here we go. Postman to the rescue. What I need to do is turn this into a post, and then HTTP hypertext transfer protocol, this IP address at that port, and I want to post, yes, this variable into the as form data, and I called it house name. I'm just going to call it Young's house, because Mr. Young Kim was on our chat, and the endpoint was actually API house. doesn't work. 405 method not allowed because, oops, I called it host. Gosh darn, what the hell? Heck, what the heck? What the heck? Okay, I did not name it properly. Gonna run something like a G unicorn or something. Anyway, we're gonna try that again. Young's house, exactly as expected. Let me put here Mr. Rollick's house. Rollick house. And then I should get that right back at me. Very groundbreaking. I should go and get venture capital funding for this application. Probably worth like 21 million Zimbabwe bucks or something. Okay, so we got that in. And we're gonna just follow what SQL Alchemy had laid out for us, which is right here. We're gonna do new house, and we call it house equals. I probably need to import that as well because it's not part of this, or is it? Yeah, I need to import that. So import, what did I call it? Did I call it house? From current house, import house. Okay. So the dot is saying from relative into this little doohickey, import that class. So notice here that user has the parameters as part of the constructor, or the initializing parameters right there, username and email, and then that kind of follows there. I think that is some method that is part of that. So let's see if what happens if we do that. So I called it ID in house. ID, you shouldn't need it, so I put house name. Oh yeah, look at that, it auto completes. Wait a minute. House name. Yes, house name. Man, this is confusing once I create something with the same name as the variable name. That's probably not a good thing. Let's call this new house name, just to make it a little less confusing. So return new house name. We've got that going on, and we're going to do the DB database. Did I import the database? Oh no, I need to do all this database fancy stuff here. So that database fancy stuff comes from house, so I'm gonna have to import that from the house module here. So from house import database. This is completely bad. We should have it separated off, but for the sake of this exercise and getting something up, it's fine, but it's not fine at the same time. It's like really bad. It's really bad because later on you're gonna have that scattered in everywhere, and it's, yeah, you're gonna get fired for being a bad person, very bad person. So I'm gonna do this little function here, tell my database session to add the house, database session commit, I believe it's commit. So add and then commit, and then that should work. So let's get into the command line, kill it, bring it back up, hopefully no errors. Whoa, what's this? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's set to true or false to suppress this warning. All right, so this is some deprecation warning, but that's okay. Deprecations are not our concern at the moment. Our concern is to see if I can put Mr. Rollick into a house. And I can't, because no such table house. You know why? That's exactly it. There's no tables. I need to do some Flask commands. Let me see if I'm supposed to do it from here. I think it's Flask DB. Actually, let's look up the documentation. When in doubt. Okay, they go through the code here, relationships, road to enlightenment. There is some commands that I need to run in order to create the tables. Where are we? Multiple database, Flask, simple relationships, SQL Alchemy, read this verse. Where's the command line for it? Python install, blah, 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 migrations. Here we go. Migrations. Where is the dang thing? Oh, I can just look it up. Flask, SQL Alchemy, migration, database. Migrate, no. Database migration, Flask. Look at that, Stack Overflow to the rescue. What's the command line to run it? I forget what the command line to. No one cares about that. Python models, DB init. No such command, DB. Flask, SQL. Flask help. Flask. Shell. Oh, you know what? Flask help. I'm always in the wrong directory. Flask shell. Help. What's the thing to run database migration there? I have it somewhere there. I keep forgetting what it is. It is. There's like a bunch of commands that you need to run in order to create the database for the first time. And Control D, Flask DB, is it? It is, no, it's not Flask DB, SQL Alchemy, no such command, Flask. Where did it go? It escapes my mind what the Flask, that command is for running SQL Alchemy on there. Flask SQL Alchemy setup database. Quick start. Did I miss it? Where's the setup? Install. Gotta run the migrations, create all. Wait a minute. To create initial database, just import the DB object from the Python. What the? Okay, I guess I got to do this thing. That's not what I had to do before. It's weird. I'm going to check up some old code here. Did I do that? Did I actually do a create all? I guess I did. Gosh. So we're gonna get back into the shell. Let's see here. From source dot house dot db or house import db. Cannot import name db import db. What is this? No module name house. From, what did I call it? From, oh, no, from house dot house. Source dot house dot import db. Dang. No, cannot import name db house. DB import DB. This is not going very well, is it? Let's see. From this guy here, from my application, import DB. DB create all. Son of a from app, or the source dot app import DB. God, I hate working in the command line of Python like this. Gonna do migrate equals migrate app.db. Do I need Flask migrate as well? Flask migrate. Yeah, that's another thing altogether. So Flask migrate is the module that checks for changes inside DBs from one version to the next. But what I really want before I even get to that is to create the minimal application here in the SQL ORM. Once SQL user. Okay, I got like 5 minutes before I call this. I call it in and then try to figure out what was going on in this application here. And then completely delete this because as you see in the title, this is a test run. Sorry, Mr. Abe and Mr. Young. Ba, ba, ba. All right. We're gonna go and try and create all run. Well, what happens if I just do this? Copy paste SQL Alchemy create all is not defined, obviously not. To create the initial DB, just import the DB object from the interactive shell and run that. That's my import for there. From source or hold on, from source.house.db import DB. No module name source. Run? No, run is not defined. So if I go here, it's not going to work because it does not have the ability to run it unless I cheat and do something stupid like this is totally wrong. Totally bad, but we're going to see if we can force it to create parameters right back on. Okay, so something's happening. No such table. House. Insert into house value, whatever. So this is our database here. We are saying that this is the connection to that database over there. Does it actually exist? Test.db, test.db. Yes, it does. It's empty as expected. Let's go back into there. Why is SQL Alchemy not allowing me to create the application? Or rather, you create the database and then just import the DB. Okay, son of a. I'm just gonna try and do this the right way here. So if I do import source.app source.house.db source.house, wait, from source.house.db. I'm pretty sure I did this so many times already. Source dot. You know what? I give up. I'm going to put the database configuration right in the application. Probably, maybe I should do it here. Just mangle stuff up here. Or no, wait. That won't even happen yet because that goes in way before that. Okay. Even worse. I'm going to organize this a little bit better next time, but now this is crying because it is looking for the DB, but the DB is in the app, but I can't reference the app because that's where the DB is, and it's not going to like that whatsoever. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit more and just create a DB module where the module is, the module does the work. Blah, blah, blah. But then the module also needs the application. DB is that SQL Alchemy. Yeah, this is starting to get into a circular dependency. I have to see how I've structured that up in my other application there. So, guess that's how, which is literally creating this application. I create this. Let me pull this guy here, put the config over here, paste that over here inside the database from, oh shoot, this is not the right, it's not the right name. Okay. And from SQL Alchemy, Flask SQL Alchemy, import. So I'm getting right into the weeds of this thing of configuration, which is not what I wanted to do, but in order for it to work in a predictable manner, I'm gonna just have to go to that. So we got this module here that has the database stuff separated from all the other configurations, and then that allows me to just from source.db import. I can just use the database from there and not have that. So all my configuration is hidden from me inside this module right here. Which case now I need to reference that within one of these applications here. So if I import that from house routes, that's going to use this. It's going to go back into there and it's going to get the apps. Let's hopefully there's no circular dependencies, because that's like the, okay, let me just get out of there, Control D. Okay, let's try that. From source.app import DB. No, what did I do wrong now? Gosh. From source.db import DB. D, Control D. Okay, you know it's bad when I start whistling, because come on, Flask SQL. Flask S hell indeed. From my source.app, source.db, import db. Freaking hell. Okay. We got the DB module imported. db.create all. Can't see my fingers. Can't see my fingers. So stupid. I mean, so good. And that's part of development, is sometimes you hit a little bit of a roadblock, but you just got to plow right on through it. And actually, sometimes, you know what? You just got to step away from the computer, because you might just be viewing the same stupid stuff over and over, or you're not thinking straight just because you're so focused. And this better work. There we go. Post it into the house. The return gave me exactly what I wanted. And all because I created the file in SQLite, which worked. Now, Young's. Actually, you know what? Kim House. Let's be respectful. Kim House has a house. Okay, so let's see what we did here. We, in all this one file, created the house, and we added it into the DB session, and then committed it and just returned the name, which is great. But now let's say we want to fetch that house back. I'm going to create another request. So from here, 127.0.0.1 5000 API house, and we're just going to go get it. And what's going to happen is going to give us rich house, poor house, because it's hard coded. So what we want to do is look at the SQL Alchemy instructions on how to get the stuff here. So we're going to do query all. So we're going to load up that class house.query all, because that's what, oh wait, query. Let's not typo ourselves into frustration. Let's see if this will actually work. I'm just going to return okay, just for debug purposes. And let's run this. Let's do the get on the API house. Nothing broke. That means the query came out. And let's look at what query.all returns actually. Query.all gives us this thing here. I wonder if we can just JSONify that. Let me just say all houses. Probably like houseless or something, but whatever. All houses. Can we just straight up JSONify that and just save us some time? It's exciting. We're gonna try and see what happens. No, the reason why is because house is not JSON serializable. House is a bunch of objects, so I think I need to iterate over this. So even though it's returning a list of houses, I need to loop through that and give me something that is usable. So let's just call it all houses. And for all houses, for all house in all houses, we're going to give it to a dictionary that Python or JSONify can actually, serialize, which serialize is turning the object into a string. So I'm going to just append house dot house name, just straight up access those methods like nobody's business. Okay, where my mouse cursor go? Okay, there it is. All right, boy. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens because what is not JSON serializable? But didn't, oh, of course, gotta put in the proper variable into there. Do that again. So, oh, look at that. So now we have what we put into it. So I'm going to put in a couple of more house. Let me put the cheer house in there. Boom. Boom. So I can put additional houses into the database, which is SQLite. Hello. And then it should come up over there. All right, so this is pretty much Flask connected to a simple SQLite database, and we're just gonna go quickly look over this application and what it comprises of. We got the main entry point into here, which is the app.py, and from here we just load in another module and just tell it to look at that route, and those routes inside here lists all the different endpoints that the API provides. So we got one for fetching the houses and one for posting the houses, placing or putting the houses, and they're defined by these at notation here, the annotation. This is some meta programming that just says that anytime it sees API house from a GET request, it's going to hit this function. Same with this, it goes that same way and then through that function. A couple of ways to clean up this thing, which I would prefer, is to put all this logic that happens in here, which is right now very minimal, into a service class, so that you're hiding things like this where it has to go through and clean up the requests, or sorry, the objects return into something usable. And that is the first episode of what I call this, live stream learning. And that was a simulation of going in here as if I hadn't ever touched it, which from that stream it probably seemed like I had touched Flask. But yeah, that's the learning process that we're going through here, is to get a simple web application running. And that was that. Catch me in the next one. Bye.